Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a scenario that I think is going to feel uncomfortably familiar to you.
Okay.
You're working on something complex. Maybe it's a financial forecast, a report, or just a really tricky email. You hit a wall. You stare at that blinking cursor. So what do?
You open a new tab.
You open a new tab, you type in a prompt, and you ask the AI to do the heavy lifting.
It's the modern reflex, isn't it? It's become the new calculator. We don't even think about it anymore.
Exactly. The new calculator. And that's the key word, calculator. We trust calculators implicitly. If I type 654 times 92, I don't double check it. I just assume it's right.
Of course.
And we're starting to treat large language models with that same level of, implicit trust. We assume that because they sound smart, they are calculating the truth.
Which is incredibly dangerous because they aren't calculators. They're prediction engines. They predict the next likely word, not necessarily the next logical step.
And that distinction, prediction versus logic, is exactly what we're unpacking today. We have this fascinating case study that exposes just how dangerous that blind trust can be.
I've been looking forward to this one.
We're looking at an experiment by a blogger who goes by Hisnap. The post is titled, "Computer says hashtag tag tag tag, why you should never trust a computer." And this isn't about an AI getting a date wrong or hallucinating a fake court case, which we've all seen.
No, this is much more subtle and, frankly, much more significant. This is about an AI making a logical error so massive, so fundamental, that it changed the conclusion of a financial analysis by 1.4 million pounds.
Wait, say that again?
1.4 million pounds per household.
That is a number that just stops you in your tracks.
Yeah.
If that happened in a corporate audit, or if a government budgeted that way, heads would roll.
Immediately. It's the difference between being bankrupt and being a millionaire. It's not a small mistake.
So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how a machine that is, theoretically smarter than us made a mistake that big. We're going to look at what Hisnap calls the apples and cherries problem, and ultimately we're going to uncover why human context is the one thing you still can't automate.
It's the perfect example of the ghost in the machine. The code works, the math is technically correct, but the reasoning is just deeply, fundamentally flawed.
Okay, let's set the stage. Hisnap, our author, they're not a data scientist at Google or anything. They describe themselves as a gamer, a mental health sufferer, and someone just really interested in politics.
Right, and they wanted to answer a classic political question. Is the UK tax system actually fair?
It's the value for money question, really.
Exactly. I pay all these taxes. Income tax, national insurance, VAT, fuel duty, and I get services back. Roads, the NHS, schools. Hisnap wanted to know, for the average person, is that a net loss or a net gain?
So it's a simple balance sheet. Money in versus service value out. So Hisnap fires up the heavy hitters, ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and asks them to crunch the numbers.
And specifically, they focused on the middle quintile. In plain English, that's the middle class, the dead center of the income spectrum.
So we're not talking about the super rich, and we're not talking about those on full benefits. We're talking about the average working household.
Exactly, the engine of the economy. So the AI goes to work. And, I want to give the AI some credit here. It pulls data on tax bans. It looks at public spending records from government websites. It did the research part incredibly fast.
But then came the verdict. What was the AI's initial conclusion?
It was bleak. The AI calculated that the average individual in the middle class contributes about 6,965 miles a year in taxes.
Okay, nearly $7,000. That sounds about right for a median salary.
Then it looked at the value of the services that person gets back, healthcare, defense, all of it. It valued that at roughly 15,600 pounds per year.
Hold on. If I pay $7,000 and I get $15,000 back, I'm renting. That sounds like a fantastic deal. How is that bleak?
Well, that's the snapshot for a single year. But the AI then tried to project this over a lifetime, say, 60 years of economic activity. And when it ran that projection, it concluded that the median household basically breaks even, or, in some cases, is actually a net funder.
A net funder, meaning over my whole life, I pay more into the state than I ever get back.
Correct. The AI concluded the net position was roughly minus 114,000 pounds. It painted a picture where the middle class is essentially subsidizing the system and getting very little return.
Wow, that's a potent political narrative. If that came out from a major think tank, it would be front-page news. Middle class bleeding dry.
Totally. It implies the tax system isn't progressive. It suggests redistribution has failed. But Hisnap looked at this and, paused. It didn't pass the sniff test.
Right. Does this smell right? When you look around the UK,
Yeah.
free healthcare, free education.
Hmm.
It just feels unlikely the average person is losing money.
And this brings us to the apples and cherries problem.
I love a good analogy. Break this down for us.
Hisnap uses this in the blog. Imagine you're comparing fruit consumption. Shopper A buys 5 apples. Shopper B buys 5 cherries. If you just say they bought the same amount of fruit, you're mathematically accurate. 5 equals 5.
But factually, you're wrong. An apple is way bigger than a cherry. You've ignored the unit of measurement.
Precisely. And that is exactly what the AI did with the economy. It compared the tax paid by an individual against the services consumed by an individual.
I'm still trying to see the flaw there. Shouldn't you compare individual to individual? That seems logical.
In a vacuum, yes. If we were all robots living in pods, absolutely. But humans don't live in vacuums, we live in households. This is the ghost the machine couldn't see.
Okay, let's drill into this. We need to understand the household factor.
So let's look at the demographics. In the UK middle quintile, the average household size is about 2.5 people.
The classic 2.4 children rounded up.
Right. Now think about how tax works versus how services work. Tax is usually levied on the individual earner. I pay my income tax. It's singular.
Sure, my tax bill's my tax bill.
But services. Services are consumed by the household. If I'm the primary earner, I pay the tax. But my 2 kids go to state school. My partner goes to the GP. We all use the roads. The benefit is distributed across 2.5 people, even if the cost is borne by 1.
I see it. The AI was looking at that 15,600 pound value of services and assigning it to just one person, the taxpayer.
Yes. It assumed a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 taxpayer, 1 beneficiary. But in reality, for every 1 taxpayer in that middle bracket, there are 2.5 people consuming the services. The consumption is happening at 2.5 times the rate the AI thought.
So to get the real number, you can't just take the 15,600 pounds. You have to multiply it by 2.5.
And then you multiply that by a 60-year lifetime.
Oh, wow. That is not a small adjustment. That's an exponential explosion in value. It completely breaks the model.
It does. The AI was treating taxpayer and citizen as interchangeable variables. It didn't understand the concept of a dependent. It treated us all as solitary economic units.
It's almost a philosophical failure then, an inability to understand social architecture.
It is. And the technical term for this, just to get a bit nerdy, is equivalized income.
Equivalized income. It sounds complicated, but what does it actually mean?
It's just a way economists adjust household income based on size. It acknowledges a simple truth. 30,000 pounds for a single person goes a lot further than 30,000 pounds for a family of 4.
Right, that makes sense. A single person on 30K has disposable income. A family on 30K is struggling.
Exactly. Now, here's the kicker. The AI actually used the term equivalized income in its own methodology. It knew the word, but it didn't apply the logic that comes with it.
That is fascinating. It's like a parrot saying E equals MC squared. It knows the words, but it doesn't understand physics.
Perfect analogy. It adjusted the income side, but forgot to adjust the benefit side. It applied the logic halfway and then just stopped.
So let's get to the bombshell numbers. We teased the 1.4 million figure. Walk me through the before and after.
Okay, let's look at that middle quintile family again. The original AI calculation. Over a lifetime, they have a net loss of 114,000 pounds. They are losers in the system.
Okay, minus 114K, that's the baseline.
Now, Hisnap steps in. He applies the household factor. He forces the math to multiply the service value by 2.5. So the total lifetime public service value jumps from around 936,000 pounds to 2,340,000 pounds.
2.3 million pounds in services. That's staggering.
It is, and when you subtract the taxes paid from that new number, the net position shifts from minus 114,000 pounds to plus 1.3 million.
Wait, so they aren't losing over 100 grand. They're gaining 1.3 million.
Yes, they are a major beneficiary of the state.
The variance there. The gap between the AI's truth and the actual truth is 1.4 million pounds per household.
That is the scale of the error. And remember, this wasn't a calculation error. The AI didn't add 2 plus 2 and get 5. The arithmetic was flawless. The logic was garbage.
That's what's so terrifying.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a policymaker and I see a graph that says middle class losing money, I react to that. I vote based on that.
And you wouldn't question it because the math checks out. If you hired an auditor to check the formulas, they'd say these formulas are correct. You have to audit the assumptions.
And it wasn't just the middle class, was it? This rippled through the whole data set.
It did. The second quintile, so lower middle income families, the AI originally thought they got a small benefit, maybe 186,000 pounds over a lifetime.
Which is nice, but it's hardly life-changing over 60 years.
But after the correction, they also shifted to a major beneficiary of 1.3 million.
So suddenly the whole picture of the economy changes.
Completely. The corrected figures revealed that 4 out of 5 quintiles, that's the bottom 80% of all UK households, are massive net beneficiaries.
Which brings us to the actual political truth the AI missed. And again, we're not taking sides here, just looking at what the numbers say.
The policy takeaway is clear. The AI's numbers suggested the UK system was broken. The human-corrected numbers prove the system is working exactly as designed. It's a highly effective redistributive mechanism.
Right. Regardless of whether you think that's fair or unfair, that is the objective reality of how the system is built. And the AI tried to tell us the opposite.
It tried to tell us that the middle class was being hollowed out by the state, when in fact the state is one of the biggest investors in the middle class.
This really highlights the difference between data processing and reasoning.
We think they're the same thing. We think because a computer can process 1 million rows of tax data in a second, it understands taxes. But it doesn't. It understands patterns.
So what did the AI actually do well here? It wasn't useless, right?
No, not at all. It handled the complex tax rate formulas perfectly. It gathered spending data from obscure government PDFs instantly. That would have taken HisNap days to do manually.
So it's a brilliant research assistant.
It's a brilliant retrieval and calculation assistant.
Yeah.
But it failed at socioeconomic context. It didn't ask, what does this actually look like in a living room in Birmingham?
It lacked lived experience. It doesn't know my tax bill pays for my daughter's broken arm to be fixed. It just sees 2 columns in a spreadsheet, tax and health spending. It doesn't see the invisible line connecting them called family.
Exactly. And HisNap makes a really important point about this. He says the final post, the one he eventually published, was accurate, but only because he micromanaged the machine.
He had to force feed it the logic. He had to be the supervisor.
He had to explicitly tell it, multiply service value by household size. If he hadn't known basic economics or hadn't had that gut feeling, he would have published the wrong number.
Which leads to HisNap's golden rule. This is really the bumper sticker for this deep dive. Use AI as a tool. Don't trust it as an expert.
I think that needs to be printed on every office wall.
Yeah.
A tool, not an expert. A hammer is a great tool, but you don't ask the hammer where to put the wall.
And yet we are increasingly asking the hammer to design the blueprints. We ask it to write a strategy or analyze this market.
And it will give you an answer. That's the seductive part. It never says, I don't understand the social context here. It just gives you a number, minus 114,000 pounds. And it delivers it with total confidence.
That specificity breeds confidence, doesn't it? Minus 114,000 pounds sounds like a fact.
Precisely. In the industry, we call this a hallucination of logic. It's not making up facts, the tax rates were real. It's making up the connections between the facts. It's hallucinating the relationship.
So if we are going to use these tools, and we are, the genie's out of the bottle, what's the lesson here?
Skepticism. We need to reintroduce a bit of friction. When an AI gives you a surprising result, don't just celebrate, interrogate it.
Ask why.
Ask it. What assumptions did you make? Did you account for household size? Force it to show its work. Treat it like a bright but very inexperienced intern.
That's the perfect analogy. You trust them to gather the files, you trust them to sum the columns, but you check their work before you send it to the client.
Because the intern doesn't know that people live in families. That is human knowledge.
We've covered a lot of ground here. To wrap this up, HisNap's experiment started as a look at inequality, but it turned into a masterclass in critical thinking. The AI missed the concept of a family, and the result was a 1.4 million error that almost painted a false picture of an entire nation.
It really validates the role of the human in the loop. The AI provided the raw power, but the human provided the meaning.
I want to leave you with a final thought. We've been talking about this one specific example. It's easy to spot the error now because we've taken it apart.
And because the numbers were so wildly different, a 1.4 million swing is hard to miss.
Right. But here's the uncomfortable question. How many AI-generated facts are we currently accepting as truth simply because the math looks right on the surface?
That's the scary part.
If the error is in the logic, not the calculation, would you even be able to spot it? If the difference wasn't 1.4 million, but maybe just 50,000, would you just accept it? Would you build a business strategy around it?
Are we making decisions based on an AI's misunderstanding of how the world actually works?
How many of these ghosts are currently hiding in our spreadsheets right now, just waiting for a human to notice them? Something to think about the next time you hit generate. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.